That's what the Constitution says. The ultimate answer for a guy who doesn't want to do his job as president and fucks it up both either intentionally or maliciously or whatever, repeatedly. And this is a guy who basically does not care. I mean, he said to Kristen Welken the other day, he said, "I don't know whether I'm supposed to enforce the Constitution." Excuse me, what were you doing? You remember that guy Roberts with the robe and you had a Bible? Not that the Bible means anything to him. Thank God he wasn't elected Pope.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to George Conway Explains It All to Sarah. I'm Sarah Longwell, publisher of the Bulwark, and because I'm not a lawyer, I've asked my good friend George Conway from the Society for the Rule of Law to explain all the illegal news to me. But before we do that...
There is some legal news.
There's some legal.
Ecclesiastical legal news. The corporeal illegal news here in the United States. But the ecclesiastical legal news is that we literally just came in here a couple minutes after the announcement of a new pope.
The first American pope.
From Chicago.
From Chicago. I just saw somebody on Twitter.
What is his name? It's Chicago.
Are you trying to do the musical?
Yeah, or something.
No.
No?
That's not it.
Chicago. He's from Chicago.
So I saw somebody tweet right before we walked in here that finally Rome was going to have some good pizza.
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
That was fighting words.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Lord's going to like that.
Oh, wait, are you Catholic?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so did you have like a pope in this fight?
No, I did not have a pope in this fight.
Were you surprised that it's an American pope?
Yes. I mean, it's just like one of these days it was going to happen, but not in our lifetime. It's just, there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, we're only a small part of the world. Mm-hmm. Most of the popes in history have been Italian, but now that seems to have broken down. But there's so many different parts of the world where people are in need of spiritual and other assistance. So it's like it's hard to imagine why give something to the Americans who have so much is sort of like, I think, part of the thinking. And
do you think they think we need the help right now?
I kind of was wondering about that maybe they are sending in a message to America and about America. I don't know. Who knows? We don't know. They don't disclose why they did it. Maybe he's just a great guy, and apparently it sounds like he's a great guy. And it's just like, my bottom line is, it's heartening, and we are blessed, and I am grateful that we now have an American on the world stage who embodies goodness and not evil.
Well, I don't know enough about this pope to do whether I know. I don't know, man. Because Catholics, they got their stuff,
Well, he has a Twitter account.
But that was the thing I was going to say to you.
He has a Twitter account. I found some of his more recent tweets.
I did too.
And
you know who he's not
he's not a big fan of J.D. Vance.
He's not a big fan of J.D. Vance. He also, this is what is wild to me. So he went to Villanova.
And here's one. Rocco Palmo is, I think, a Vatican watcher. He does like reporting on the Vatican in Italy. And I think that's who he is. And he's a very prominent guy on Catholic Twitter. And Robert Provost, who was until a couple of hours ago, Robert Cardinal Prevost. He is now Pope Leo the 14th. He retweeted this tweet and says, and this was 4/14/25, as Trump and Bukele used the Oval to feds illicit deportation of a U.S. resident, once an undocumented El Salvadoran himself, now D.C. So he talks about it's referring to this whole obscene bit with the Venezuelans. And I mean, it's clearly he has something to say about things that we have something to say about. And I think his perspective is not going to be akin to Trump's.
I've got one here from him from February 3rd, 2025, that just says, J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. And so, I don't know. I think I remember J.D. Vance had basically said, we have to, you have to love your family first and not of all of mankind. And I mean, it's a practical matter. That's what we do. But, it's like you don't shut others out because you have a family. You are human. And that's the message that
he's saying here, he's trying to give people here.
Yeah. So
And
like,
this is it's just great to have an American on the world stage who's going to stand for something other than selfishness, greed, mendacity, cruelty, but he's going to stand for compassion and love and justice,
well, let's hope.
among many other things.
Let's hope.
And we don't, obviously there are going to be disagreements about how you apply that in individual circumstance, but it's like, we need that conscience, because it's not about, the politics of this day are not about right and left anymore. They're not about Republican and Democrat. I mean, it's about right and wrong.
Yeah.
And we just have to go back to, we may disagree on how to do what is right, but the question of why we are doing what we are doing in our hearts is paramount. And whether we're doing it out of selfish reasons, out of hatred, as opposed to, for the good of everyone, and compassionate, that's the whole ball of wax. So that's, this is a great day.
Well, I wish the new Pope good luck, and I do hope that perhaps I hope you can help redeem the United States on the world stage a little bit. That would be great. Okay, speaking of sending a signal, let's talk about Ed Martin.
Ed Martin, well.
This afternoon, Trump pulled his nominee for U.S. Attorney for D.C., Ed Martin. Martin is currently serving as interim U.S. Attorney, and the reason for his lack of fitness are, should we call them endless, boundless?
I can't keep track. I mean, you lose me at hanging out with Nazis.
Yeah, but he was a 2020 election denialism.
Denier. He represented
described-
the Jan Sixers. He was giving the Jan Sixer guy advice even after he had become interim U.S. Attorney. He was on some podcast where with some guy who was like seen with photographs dressed up as Hitler. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then he pretended like I didn't know about any of that. And then they showed like he's praising him like during the same period of time. And then he didn't disclose in his submission to the Senate Judiciary Committee the dozens of appearances he made on Russia Today, the RT network.
Yeah, it was like dozens and dozens and dozens.
Dozens and dozens. Like, why would you?
Like, you're a regular
I remember
contributor
like
to
20
RT.
years ago, I remember, you go to a hotel and RT might be in there. It's like, oh, interesting. The Russians have a TV channel like France 24 and BBC and CBC and other, right? And then by this time though, we came to realize, this is a state-controlled media operation for a tyrant. And yet he kept doing this.
Yeah, I mean, RT.
Why would you go on RT? Like, nobody in America watches it.
No, it used to be the kind of thing before relations with, there was like a period of time when I was young in DC, before the relations with Russia were more tense. They hadn't invaded a sovereign nation.
Yeah, like 20 years ago.
Like the 25-year-olds would go on RT for like media training purposes. And there were a bunch of American hosts where like the shows were kind of regular
and
American
then they gradually all
analysis
quit
shows.
because they realized they were puppets for the Russian government.
That's right. Over
and now
time.
today you can't find it in an American hotel because it's propaganda for an evil, autocratic, dictatorial regime. But he seemed to relish going on there, even though nobody watched. Why would that be? But it doesn't matter.
Well,
he's not going to be our United States Attorney in the District of Columbia.
He also called January 6th Mardi Gras in D.C.
What gras?
Mardi Gras?
Mardi Gras. Was it a Tuesday? I don't know. It was just dress up, right? It was just dress up and people in a parade.
I guess so. That's his take. He also doesn't have any experience as a prosecutor.
No, but he was writing all sorts of crazy letters to people, kind of threatening them, members of Congress. He wrote to the New England Journal of Medicine for their wokeness. Nobody could figure out that. He wrote to a couple medical journals.
Sure.
We sure? Like, why?
Well, it's sort of like he's like one of those guys who like
he's buddies with RFK Jr.
You
apparently.
imagine him sitting in his apartment, like writing and then Xeroxing it, writing in pencil, Xeroxing it, and then sending it into places. Like he sends letters to the editor everywhere.
Oh, what was funniest thing also was, he was never the official U.S. attorney in the sense of a permanent U.S. attorney appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. It wasn't even one, sometimes district courts can create acting U.S. attorneys. He was this interim U.S. attorney, and he's not entitled to say he's the U.S. attorney, but he created immediately this letterhead that didn't even look quite right. It was like letterhead that, a teenage kid would have prepared to copy Justice Department stationery, and it just said U.S. attorney, even though he wasn't the actual U.S. attorney, but he was an interim U.S. attorney.
Well, he learned that from Trump. Right? Remember when Trump, when he was out of office, set up a fake Oval Office or a fake podium?
Well, now he's got the. Oh, I saw this thing on yesterday where they did the whole bit about the gold in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
Turns out, he's showing it off to Laura Ingraham, and Trump is saying, it was very difficult to find real. If you think it looks like gold, it's real gold. And it turned out, you get a can of spray paint and the thing at Home Depot, it's the exact same thing. And they showed that on Inside Edition last night on CBS. It's yeah.
Well, here's my main question about this Ed Martin guy. The Senate confirmed Kash Patel, RFK, and specifically Tom Tillis.
Yeah.
Why do you think Ed Martin was the line?
Are you suggesting that he's not any worse than some of these other people?
Well, you tell me. I mean, I don't know that much
Well, you know
about
what
him.
it is? It's like he may be just as bad or worse, but this is a lesser position, so you'd think you'd care less, right?
Yeah.
But
why
can you have Kash Patel, who was appearing before a Senate committee yesterday, and he's supposed to submit a budget? This is what you do.
Yeah, I saw this.
You're an FBI. You're in charge of an agency. You're supposed to say, okay, here's what we do. And you're supposed to the law requires it. You submit a budget proposal to Congress so that they can look at it and say, okay, this looks okay. What's this about? And then send you your money. Mm-hmm. He didn't do that.
He was I'm not doing a budget.
I was like, no, I didn't do my homework. And they said, well, do you have any plans to do your homework? No.
What about concepts of a plan?
Concepts of a plan. No, but it's okay, but you run this agency. Maybe we disagree about what the agency should do with its money and time, but it exists. Well, let's say I'm a member of the Senate. We have to fund it because it's there until somebody repeals the law saying there's an agency. So why can't you tell us how much money you need so we can give you the money, or at least some of it, or at least talk about it? And he won't do that. So what does he do?
I don't know. This is sort of my point. It's these people were all unqualified.
They're all bad.
We knew that. Tom Tillis voted for them presumably because he had a primary. But does he have a specific? Do you think that did he?
No,
I
think it's all political.
Okay.
I know that's shocking.
Yeah.
The political calculus here is if you say no to the president on people who are down the chain, he's going to get less mad at you. And the MAGAs are going to get less mad at you because this is not the attorney general. I voted for the attorney general. I would have even voted for Matt Gaetz. I don't know that. I voted for Tulsi. Or no, Tulsi wasn't confirmed, but Hegseth. They voted for all these bad people.
No, Tulsi was confirmed.
What?
Tulsi was confirmed.
Was it NSA? I can't remember. Yeah. So you say you can. The cover for them now is we voted for all these people. And there's less impact from saying no to a lower level person. This is one of 88 or 93 U.S. attorneys. I forget how many.
Yeah.
It's one of the two most important U.S. attorney slots.
Yeah.
This in the Southern District of New York. There's also Eastern District of Illinois, Central District of California, Northern District of California. There are other important ones, but this office and the Southern District of New York are probably the two most important.
Well, I guess I understand your point. I understand your point that defying Trump on the bigger ones may seem like a bigger political lift for a guy like Tillis, but it actually seems sort of the inverse to me, but this is probably my naivete. It's who can do the most damage and where do you call in your chits? Where do you stand up to Trump? And I think it's weird to stand up to a U.S. attorney versus.
I think the U.S. This is the point I was making, is that this U.S. Attorney's Office and the Southern District U.S. Attorney's Office are the most powerful in the nation.
Yeah.
They can do a lot of damage, yet so you don't want somebody bad in those positions. Okay, I mean, these are the people who could investigate members of Congress if they chose to, right? Because this is where everybody is. And so you really don't want somebody bad here, yet at the same time, you can say, well, it's no big deal. There are other people who can do it. There are 88 U.S. attorneys, and I voted for the Attorney General. I voted for the Deputy Attorney General. I voted for the Associate Attorney General. I voted for the head of the Civil Rights Division. I voted for the head of the Civil Division, the head of the Criminal Division. And then when this guy, one level below all those, I said, no biggie. We can get another one.
Well, and that is how Trump reacted.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, this happens sometimes.
He has less of, right. Yeah. It's like, this is like 3 or 4 layers down. That being said, if you are going to pick a position and create a quotient of significance in the chart, in terms of height in the chart, location in the chart versus as the denominator, and then importance, practical importance, this would be a high ratio.
Yeah.
One. Did that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. Okay, so what would have happened if he had been confirmed? Like, what do you think this guy would have done? He's
completely incompetent, but he would have used the U.S. Attorney's Office to basically go after the president's enemies, and I mean, he was promising to do that. And you'd have, it would make it that much easier to haul people into the grand jury in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia and get them to testify to investigate enemies and rivals and whatnot. So, yeah, he would. These investigative powers would have been abused and misused. He was basically going out there and getting ready to do that and talking about it and threatening people.
And you don't think
now that being said, well, that's
like
the question. We're going to probably get somebody not that great to follow.
And could they be competent and not that great?
Yeah, you could actually, you could always do worse. You could end up with somebody just as malevolent, but less incompetent and more experienced.
Yeah, this is the problem with, I was thinking about this when...
But, you just can't just say, I mean, the problem is you get people who are so bad, what are you going to say? It's like, well, these are the worst people we could think of, but Trump, he's probably going to come up with somebody worse, so let's just vote for him. You can't do that.
No, but even if this is what I was going to say was with Mike Walls, when they moved him over to now he's going to be the United Nations ambassador if he gets confirmed.
Yeah.
I was thinking like Hegseth really should have gone down for the Signal Gate. But who do they replace Hegseth with? Mike Flynn? Rick Grinnell? Like, there's nobody in Trump's orbit when you get one of these guys gone, even though they are incompetent.
Right.
It is true, whoever they replaces them is also terrible.
Right. I mean, they're not just terrible, but just like bad and unqualified.
Yeah.
And then they'll be, if the people who are, if by chance you get somebody good, they'll just get neutered. I mean, look at Besant. He's a competent guy. He is on paper qualified to be Secretary Treasury, understands markets very well, but he's reduced to not being unable to answer who pays tariffs when a member of Congress asks him. Yeah. You can't answer that with a straight question, because if he answers it the way a normal person with his experience and knowledge would answer it, it would contradict the president.
Also, the way he's answered it his whole life, because he's on the record plenty prior to his work in the administration talking about tariffs.
Right. You've been saying your whole life the sky is blue and occasionally has these white clouds in it, and then all of a sudden, you have to say the sky is orange.
Yeah.
And it's just a question of perspective, I guess.
Yeah. What facts you might have.
Alternative facts.
Anything else you want to say on Ed Martin?
No.
Okay.
Good riddance.
Then we could move on to the law firm litigation, because last Friday, again, right after we taped, Judge Beryl Howell in the D.C. District Court issued a 102-page opinion striking down Trump's executive order against the law firm Perkins Coie, which we've talked about a lot on the show. Perkins Coie challenged the constitutionality of the executive orders that Trump had been making against the law firms as, number one, violating the First Amendment, 2, violating the right to due process, 3, violating Perkins Coie's client's right to counsel, and 4, denying equal protection under the law by signaling out the firm. The opinion starts like this. I want to read it because this is a good one. No American president has ever before issued executive orders like the one at issue in this lawsuit, targeting a prominent law firm with adverse actions to be executed by all executive branch agencies, but In purpose and effect, this action draws from a playbook as old as Shakespeare, who penned the phrase, "The first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers." And then the opinion concludes like this. The U.S. Constitution affords critical protections against executive action like that ordered in this executive order against Perkins Coie. Government officials, including the president, may not subject individuals to retaliatory actions after the fact for having engaged in protected speech. They may neither use the power of the state to punish or suppress disfavored expression, nor engage in the use of purely personal and arbitrary power. In this case, these and other foundational protections were violated by this executive order. On that basis, this court has found that the executive order violates the Constitution and is thus null and void. These are like the court opinions, even I, as not a lawyer, and when I read these court opinions, they are so strongly worded, right? They want to be like, you guys are throwing the Constitution in the toilet with this, and it is an abuse of executive power.
Because that's what it is. These are no-brainer cases. There's no, the government didn't have a leg to stand on. I mean, it's not even close. And, there are 3 more of these cases pending in the same court before different judges. There's one involving another law firm, Jenner Block, another one involving Sussman Godfrey, another one involving, I forget what the other firm is, but there are 4 of these cases, and we're going to get basically 4 opinions just like this one. They probably won't have to be as long because they can just sort of rely on some of the authorities that Judge Howell cited here. But they're all going to basically say the same thing. And in her opinion, she cites some of the other executive orders. And then, some of the settlements to undercut the idea that there is anything other than impure motive here, a motive designed to punish for protected activities.
Yet there was another good quote, "Settling personal vendettas by targeting a disliked business or individual for punitive government action is not a legitimate use of the powers of the U.S. government or an American president."
Absolutely. It's another example of Donald Trump taking the position that l'état c'est moi. I am the state. There is no difference between my interest and the state's interest. This power of the state is mine. The power, everyone works for me personally. And if someone crosses me, then I will use the powers of the state to punish them. And that's what these executive orders are all about. And that's why they're unconstitutional.
Here's my big question.
Yes.
When I read this, I was like, how mad are all those other law firms that they just caved? Like, why? Every single one of them robbed themselves. These are.
Well, they shouldn't be mad. Anybody other than themselves, they should be shamed.
They should be shamed. This is what I mean.
And there's a footnote, by the way, footnote 3 in Judge Howell's opinion, where she basically says they should be ashamed. She didn't quite use those words, but she kind of expresses contempt at the fact that these other law firms caved.
That felt very clear in this opinion. And I guess what I mean by mad is like, I feel like they should be doing self-recrimination at the fact that they made the wrong call.
Right.
Do you think they are?
From what I hear, there is a lot of upset at these law firms. We did see I think it was yesterday, Jay Johnson, who was formerly in the cabinet what was the Biden or Obama cabinet? Which cabinet?
I don't know.
I think it was the Biden cabinet. He's a partner at Paul Weiss, and he left. He decided to retire from Paul Weiss and join. He became a chairman of the board of trustees of Columbia. And so, he didn't say that he was leaving because of this, but you have to think that there are a lot of people who are just unhappy at these law firms who, if they could find, a comparable position or a landing spot, they would do it. And, these law firms, they have not helped their reputations. There was a story last week about how Microsoft had previously been represented by Simpson, Thacher, and Bartlett, a major New York law firm they settled. And it was in a litigation in Delaware, corporate litigation. And they fired Simpson and Thacher and hired Jenner and Block, which has a case against the administration. And again, we don't know what Microsoft's thinking was there because they didn't say it had anything to do with the executive orders. But my view would be, I want lawyers who fight. And if they won't fight for themselves, why should I expect they fight for me? And, I think And I think, again, as I've said in the past, a lot of what motivated some of these bigger firms, either in New York or outside New York, who have New York-style mergers and acquisitions practices, is the fear of not being able to get mergers and acquisitions approved by various regulatory arms of the federal government, including antitrust authorities. The fact is that this man's crushing the economy, and there are no deals to be had. So, they basically are destroying their reputation for revenue that may not ever come through.
I know
may not have ever come through because what Trump is doing on the economic front is just incredibly ironic. And I just think at the end of the day, these firms aren't going to go out of business because they do a few less deals. It just means that your average profits per partner go from, I don't know, 8 million or 6 million to 3 million. Mm-hmm. Okay? And you can't have that extra house in the Hamptons or whatever you want or wherever you want to be.
I always think about it, and you see how they relate to each other, right? You got Sherry Redstone over here putting pressure on 60 Minutes at CBS because she wants to get this Paramount deal done, right? A merger and acquisition. So somewhere there's a law firm with a big M&A representing them. None of that's moving anywhere. Like, It's not like by kowtowing to Trump.
Right.
And which, again, not that if they were getting what they wanted, it would be better. But the idea even that there's like a good business reason for doing this and that they owe it to their shareholders or whatever, not really. Like, doesn't seem to be paying off.
It doesn't pay off. And again, I mean, there was one of the arguments was, people are trying to steal business from us. And, we have all of these secretaries and messengers and associates we need to pay. So we have to, we have to maintain the bottom line. It's like, no, you can still pay them. It just means you're just going to take home less as partners at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And, it is just incredibly short-sighted, And I think the firms that have capitulated are not going to be remembered well. And I think in particular Brad Karp at Paul Weiss, who basically got the ball rolling.
Yeah, the first to cave.
I mean, Stu Stevens was commenting, like, this is what that man's going to be remembered for. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the truth is, it's going to be the case because nobody, only I had heard of the guy because I practiced across the street. Like, now all these people know who Brad Karp is, but they don't know him for anything good. And I don't know why anybody who spent an entire life burnishing a professional reputation, would have, have chosen to trash it like that. It just reflected bad judgment.
This is neither here nor there, but there's something odd about the fact that Karp, the lawyer, and Karp, the fish, in Michigan, both seem to be causing people to acquiesce to Trump.
Yeah.
Okay. If you've ever struggled with choosing between the performance and durability of stainless steel pans and easy cleanup nonstick pans, then Hexclad is your solution. Their pans are durable, sleek, and don't come with the fear of having to scrape off burned food, just something that I hate. You can just toss it in the dishwasher after you finish preparing your dinner. And since I do all the dishes in my house because I can't really cook, it's important to me to have good pans that are easy to clean. The patented hexagon design also protects against scratches, even when using metal utensils. And Hexclad isn't just about pots and pans. Their knives are made of 67 layers of Japanese Damascus steel for a sharper edge that stays sharp longer for effortless slicing. Ooh, that sounds awesome. Wonder if they can slice like a tin can.
67 layers.
I don't even know how you get 67 layers on a knife. Gordon Ramsay uses Hexclad in his restaurants and his home. I feel like they shouldn't give that guy sharp knives. Every time I see him on TV, he's screaming at someone. I wouldn't give him knives. And he's the toughest critic on the planet. For a very limited time only, shop at Hexclad's Mother's Day sale for up to 49% off and a free gift with purchase when you order one of their best-selling bundles with our exclusive link. Just head to hexclad.com/askgeorge. I have got the Hexclad, they send them to, our sponsors, they send us stuff. This is one of the best things I've gotten from a sponsor. I'm always burning myself on a hot handle. I'm bad in the kitchen is just the case. I don't do a ton of the cooking, but I'll make like grilled cheese or rice or boil water.
I do grilled cheeses and I do scrambled eggs, basically.
Yeah, that's right. But even then, I manage to like burn myself or otherwise do damage. I'm exactly the type of person. I wash the cast iron skillet, which you're not supposed to do. I use metal utensils on the pan. And so the fact that these are like durable, they don't scratch, gets me out of trouble at home. And you guys, think about your mothers. Mother's Day is coming up, and for a very limited time only, you can shop Hexclad Mother's Day sale for up to 49% off site-wide and a free gift with purchase when you order one of their best-selling bundles with our exclusive link. So guys, you got to go support our show and check them out at hexclad.com/Ask George. Make sure to let them know we sent you. Bon appetit. Let's eat with Hexclad's revolutionary cookware. Awesome. Thank you, Hexclad.
Yes, we pan.
Both of us really crushing
Yes,
it
we
with
pan.
the jokes. Alien Enemies Act. So there were preliminary injunctions in New York and Colorado.
Yep.
And so last week we talked about the Texas District Court decision blocking the use of the Alien Enemies Act to send Venezuelans in the U.S. to a prison in El Salvador. Since then, 2 more district courts enjoined the use of the Alien Enemies Act, the Colorado and the New York one. In the Colorado opinion, the judge wrote this: the government's arguments are threadbare costumes for their core contention. As for whether the Alien Enemies Act's preconditions are satisfied, that is the president's call alone. The federal courts do not have a role to play. This sentence staggers. It is wrong as a matter of law and attempts to read an entire provision out of the Constitution. Trump just keeps like losing and losing on these Alien Enemies Act cases. How do you think the administration is going to respond?
Well, they don't really have a response. They're just doing this. They're just doing the same thing over and over again, which are just saying, well, we say that the statutory prerequisites are met. It's kind of like the Lewis Carroll Alice in Wonderland. It's if I say something is the case, it's the case. And the problem is, yes, the president has a lot of discretion as to who he throws out of the country who's an alien enemy, if there is an enemy.
Sure.
And there is only an enemy, basically, under that statute as it is written in simple, plain language, if there is an invasion, as we discussed last week, or a predatory incursion, both of which connote military actions directed at particular sites and spots and locations, whether it be we're taking over San Antonio or we're conducting a raid on Brownsville, okay? None of that has happened. Tren de Aragua has not done that. They're just a bunch of people who may be criminals or may be doing bad things, landing at different points in the country and doing different things in a sporadic manner. And not only that, I mean, the other district court gave them the benefit of the doubt on the government, the benefit of the doubt on this. Not clear that they're doing it on behalf of the Venezuelan government. In fact, there was a FOIA request that produced a government document that basically said that the intelligence agencies of this country do not believe that the government of Venezuela controls this organization. Which means that yet, if that's true, you accept that it's true, that means yet another prerequisite for the application of the Alien Enemies Act does not apply, which is that the invasion or the predatory incursion, neither of which has happened, has to happen at the behest of a foreign government or state. And it didn't. So basically, none of the prerequisites for application of this statute that allows the president to declare that, to determine which people over the age of 14 who are aliens from a particular country that has engaged in such an invasion or incursion, again, which didn't happen. We don't get to that point. And that's just very, very basic. And it doesn't infringe on the president's powers because Congress specifically did not give the president the power to remove people unless these prerequisites are met. And the government hasn't even come up with a coherent argument as to why. It's just pure conclusion. We're just going to call it an invasion. Where is it, guys? Where is it?
Well, this is what they try to do.
It would have been on the 11 o'clock news, I think.
Yeah, this is what they try to do with like the MS-13 stuff. Like, Tren de Agua, which you pronounced it better than I did.
I don't know.
But it's a gang. They're bad. They do bad things.
Yeah.
But the point is like, we prosecute gangs like gangs.
Right.
It's not that you can't prosecute them. It's not that you can't go after them.
And you can deport them.
It's not even that you can't deport them. You can.
Yeah, you just have to. There are ways to do that. This statute is not one of them.
Statute is not one of them. All right. So how do we feel, though, the courts are doing overall? We talked about this a little bit on the Next Level, Tim, JVL, and I. And it's a little tough because a lot of people are still sitting in jail. People have still been wrongly deported. But the courts do seem to be sort of staunching the bleeding.
Yeah, no, they're doing the right thing, saying the right thing. And they are, they're causing the government to have to stop doing things to some extent. But the government is looking for ways around doing these things. That this is why you see these movements of detainees in the middle of the night from state to state.
Right.
They're trying to basically play cat and mouse with the ACLU and potential lawyers for these people. And then saying, sorry, you can't sue here. We moved him at 2:00 in the morning. And we've seen, that kind of hopscotching around the country and procedural wrangling. And at the end of the day, the question is, are they violating these court orders? And as I've said, they're doing it they've been doing it in kind of a dog ate my homework kind of way.
Yeah, right.
Like saying, oh, gee, sorry, they've already left the country, or sending lawyers to court who don't have the answers to the questions that the judge wants. And then, when they get when the judges, in order to enforce their orders, either to be able to tell the government what to do. You have to know where the prisoners are. You have to know what the conditions of confinement are. You have to know that. Or in the case of if the order was violated, as Judge Boasberg thinks it may have been before him, you have to find out who did that and how did they do that. And you've got these judges like Judge Zinnish in the Abrego Garcia case in the District of Maryland, and Judge Boasberg in the District of Columbia in the original Venezuelan deportation case. They're trying to find facts. They're trying to conduct discovery. They're making inquiries of the government. And Judge Zinnish yesterday was faced with an assertion by the government of the state secret privilege that we're not going to answer your questions because this is a state secret. This is really, really national security stuff. And I don't think that's going to fly, but this is the kind of thing they're doing. They're trying to hide the ball.
I want to talk about the state secret thing. I want to get into that. First, True Classic has one mission: to make sure guys look good and feel even better. If you want a fantastic fit, feel, and price across your entire wardrobe, not just tees, but hoodies, jeans, activewear, everything you need is at True Classic. But True Classic isn't just about great clothes. Their brand DNA is built on being highly intentional in everything they do. From creating high-quality essentials to providing excellent customer service to giving back to the community they believe in, every detail is done with purpose. George, you've been wearing True Classic for a while now.
I have. I got a whole shipment a few weeks ago, and they're comfortable, and they're perfect for the summer because they're really, really cool and light.
But they didn't even send them to you as the sponsor. You went out and bought a bunch of them.
I know, I'm a sucker.
You are.
But I got the discount.
You used the discount code?
I did use the discount code.
What is the discount code?
It was something like George something.
Oh, the discount code is Ask George.
Oh, okay.
Ask George. That's your discount code. I know. He had to call the office.
I did. I had to call. Guys, where's the discount code
for True Classic? I need to order a bunch of their stuff.
And then they said, Ask George. I said, oh, that's neat. I should remember that.
Yeah, you should. It's what a code.
Yep.
Well, you look great. You look great. I love when you wear your True Classic. So forget overpriced designer nonsense. Skip the cheap throwaways. True Classic delivers premium essentials built for real life. Grab yours at Target or Costco or head to trueclassic.com/askgeorge.
Moi.
All one word.
Ask moi.
To get hooked up today. Yeah, George won't remember our code, but you should remember it. Ask George.
Ask George.
All right. So
don't ask George what the Ask George code is. All right, I get that.
All right, so the Abrego Garcia state secrets case. The government was invoking the state secrets and deliberative process privilege.
Yeah. That means we have to be able to talk freely with each other in order to basically figure out what we're going to do.
Is that what it means? I was like, when somebody has, I guess what they're invoking, it sounded like to me was,
It's a form of executive privilege.
Okay, can they just say anything is executive privilege?
No,
or they can't just say everything's state secrets.
Right. They have to provide some foundation for it.
But this is the second time in recent
And
weeks that
none
the
of- look-
government has tried to invoke the state secret privilege. The
Yeah.
last time was when Judge Boasberg requested information about the timing of the flights to El Salvador. So it's just like, is this the administration just throwing out whatever they can to avoid bringing Abrego home? Abrego Garcia?
They're basically...
Hey everyone, thanks for watching the show. If you want to catch the rest of this episode, then go become a Bulwark Plus subscriber. The link to become a subscriber is right below here in the episode description. Click on that, become a Bulwark Plus subscriber, catch the rest of the show, and support all the great work we do here at the Bulwark. Thanks, guys.
Well, George Conway, he's a man with a plan. Got to sit down with Sarah Longwell, take a stand, explain all the legal problems they're piling high. With Donald Trump, oh my, oh my, oh my. He said, Sarah, let me break it down for you. There's obstruction of justice.